And he died 5 months later. And before he died, I was able to tell him that I loved him. So many elected officials, Democrats as well as Republicans, take money from the fossil fuel industry, and now it's going to be the nuclear industry.
Since the book has been out, I've gotten many, many letters from Vietnam veterans who indicate that they have healed and that they are forgiving.
Jane Fonda is 87 years old, but something happened to her that nobody expected. The woman who sat on enemy weapons in Vietnam, the actress who made America sweat in leg warmers, the star who disappeared for 15 years. She's back, and she looks nothing like you remember. Her hair shocked everyone at the Oscars. Her face tells a story Hollywood tried to hide. Some say she found the secret. Others say she paid a price. The truth is stranger than any movie role she ever played. Jane Fonda was born into fame, wealth, and pressure. Her father, Henry Fonda, was already a rising star in Hollywood. Her mother, Frances, came from high society and traced her family line back to royalty. She was born on December 21, 1937, in one of Manhattan's richest neighborhoods. From the outside, everything looked perfect. But inside the Fonda household, it was anything but. Her father's acting career kept him away for long periods. When he was home, he was cold, distant, and quick to anger. Her mother was in and out of psychiatric hospitals. Jane was just 12 when her mother took her own life while institutionalized. The truth was kept from her for months. She was told it was a heart attack. She later discovered it was suicide by reading it in a magazine. There was no comfort, no explanation. The family just moved on. Jane wasn't even allowed to go to the funeral. Her mother's name was barely spoken after that. Jane's childhood, full of wealth and fame, became a golden cage. Appearances mattered more than feelings. She grew up knowing how to smile in public, but never learned how to cry in private. Her father, Henry, couldn't say, "I love you." Not to Jane, not to her brother Peter either. He could act out emotions on screen, but in real life, he was unreachable. Peter once said he only heard those 3 words from Henry when their father was old and dying. Jane tried for years to earn his approval, but he rarely gave compliments. He rarely gave anything. Frances, her mother, had deep mental health issues. She was often gone. Jane didn't know why. No one explained. Later, she would learn that her mother had bipolar disorder. Even worse, she had been sexually abused as a child. That trauma shaped everything: how Frances acted, how she looked, how she loved. Just before she died, Frances came home briefly from the institution. She asked her children to come to her room. Jane didn't go. She stayed upstairs. Her brother went. Jane couldn't. Maybe she didn't know how to. Maybe she was scared. That was the last time she could have seen her mother alive. A month later, Frances was dead. Jane blamed herself for years. She thought her cold reaction had caused her mother's death. The guilt festered. It grew into something dark. She stopped eating. Then she binged. Then she purged. The cycle continued for 23 years. Jane was bulimic through most of her early acting career. She later admitted she thought it would kill her before she turned 30. Jane Fonda didn't dream of becoming a movie star. In fact, she tried to avoid it. Back in 1954, director Joshua Logan wanted her to star in The Country Girl alongside her father, Henry Fonda. She said no. At the time, acting just wasn't something she wanted. Her relationship with her father was strained, and she wasn't ready to step into his world. But Hollywood didn't give up on her. In 1960, Logan came back into the picture. This time, he cast her in Tall Story, a romantic comedy with Anthony Perkins. She took the role. By then, she had already made a name for herself on Broadway, but this film marked her true arrival in Hollywood. It earned $1.7 million in the US and Canada, a strong debut for a newcomer. Interestingly, the movie also featured a young Robert Redford in his first uncredited film appearance. Fonda's career was officially launched, but the irony? Her big break came from the very people she once ran from. A few years later, her life changed completely. In December 1963, she met French director Roger Vadim. He was bold, older by almost 10 years, and famous for his affairs with stars like Brigitte Bardot and Catherine Deneuve. Fonda married him in Las Vegas on August 14, 1965. At 28, she was still wrestling with serious insecurities, bulimia, and painful feelings about her father. Vadim stepped in with a dangerous mix of charm and control. He shaped her public image and cast her in provocative roles. He directed her, styled her, even managed her social life. Their daughter, Vanessa, was born in 1968, but behind the scenes, things were dark. Fonda later revealed that Vadim pressured her into threesomes and pushed her to flirt with women for him. He used her role in Clute as a tool, urging her to act sexy off-screen to serve his fantasies. She did it all while quietly falling apart. Then came Barbarella. The 1968 sci-fi film exploded with color, sex, and scandal. Fonda played a space heroine in a revealing outfit, floating through a world of lust and danger. Vadim directed it, of course. America was shocked. The nudity, the sensuality. It was all too much for the time. But it was also unforgettable. What the audience didn't see, though, was Fonda trembling behind the scenes. She admitted to drinking vodka before filming nude scenes. She didn't feel bold, she felt terrified. Vadim had promised her certain shots would be covered by text in the final cut. They weren't. She found out in the theater with everyone else. That betrayal cut deep. While Barbarella turned her into a sex symbol and gave her cult status, it also trapped her in an image she didn't choose. The pressure to be seductive on screen started bleeding into her real life, just as Vadim wanted. And all the while, her money was vanishing. Vadim didn't just control her emotionally, he drained her financially. He used her paychecks to throw wild parties and fund personal projects. Fonda wasn't just paying for a marriage. She was paying for his entire entourage. As her fame grew, so did her workload. She had to keep working to cover the costs of his lifestyle. Europe paid less than Hollywood, and she had no protection from this slow financial bleed. Her self-worth started to crumble. She had the fame, the success, and the applause, but none of the control. This wasn't a one-time story. Vadim wasn't the only man who tried to shape her. Fonda's relationships often followed the same pattern. Strong, charming men who wanted her spotlight, or her money, or both. She kept falling into their orbit, pulled by unresolved pain, low self-esteem, and a deep need to feel seen. Her childhood wounds made her an easy target. Jane Fonda didn't just play roles. She became them. And in 1971, she shocked Hollywood with a performance that felt too real to be acting. She played Bree Daniels in Clute, a New York call girl caught in a dangerous mystery. But Bree wasn't a fantasy. She was raw, broken, strong. Fonda spent weeks interviewing real-life sex workers, digging into their fears, their survival, their humanity. The film only cost $2.5 million to make, but pulled in over $12 million. Critics praised it. Audiences couldn't stop talking about it. And when Fonda walked on stage at the 1972 Oscars to accept her Best Actress award, she wasn't just holding a statue, she was holding proof that she had officially stepped into a new kind of stardom. But Fonda didn't get there overnight. 2 years earlier, in They Shoot Horses, Don't They?, She played Gloria Beatty, a woman so crushed by the world that she begs for death. The story takes place during the Great Depression, where desperate people enter a brutal dance marathon just for a shot at prize money. It's bleak, it's sweaty, it's soul-crushing. Fonda trained like a boxer for the role, dancing until her legs gave out, filming scenes that left her in tears. 9 Oscar nominations followed, including Best Actress. It broke records, but she didn't win that night. Maggie Smith took the prize. Still, the world now saw Fonda not as a beauty queen or a starlet, but as someone who could tear you apart with a look. Off-screen, her life was a storm. In 1965, she married French director Roger Vadim. By 1968, they had a daughter, Vanessa, but the glamour faded fast. Vadim drank, gambled, and chased other women. Fonda battled postpartum depression and later said she cried every day after the birth. She didn't feel like a mother. She felt like she was disappearing. By 1973, their marriage was over. In July 1972, Jane Fonda boarded a flight to Hanoi. The Vietnam War was still raging, and her decision to go behind enemy lines shocked the world. She didn't make the trip on impulse. Her activist partner, Tom Hayden, had encouraged it. She traveled under the radar, passing through Paris and Moscow before finally landing in North Vietnam's capital aboard an Aeroflot plane. When she arrived, North Vietnamese officials in uniform greeted her like a prized guest. They knew exactly what they were doing. To them, she wasn't just a tourist. She was a Hollywood star who could be used to embarrass America. For 2 weeks, Jane was shown everything they wanted her to see: bombed hospitals, ruined schools, damaged factories, and war museums filled with tragic images. At the Vietnam-Soviet Friendship Hospital, she was treated for a foot injury during an air raid. At Viet Duc Hospital, doctors told her they were studying birth defects caused by American chemical attacks. She also toured bombed-out dikes along the Red River Delta, where locals claimed U.S. forces were trying to flood farmland and destroy food supplies. Washington denied it. Jane believed them. She came back convinced that America was targeting civilians and farms, not just military bases. And she didn't stay quiet about it. Her trip made headlines across the world and caused instant fury back home. Others had visited North Vietnam before her, reporters, activists, even veterans, but none of them were Oscar-winning actresses with global fame. Her voice carried further, and when she used it, things exploded. While in Hanoi, she also stepped into the role of a broadcaster. From late July to early August, Jane made several radio speeches on North Vietnam's official station, Radio Hanoi. These weren't just peace talks. She told American pilots to stop bombing missions and return home. She said their leaders were war criminals and called the air raids genocide. She spoke of the Vietnamese people's strength and suffering and shared what she saw in kindergartens, textile plants, and sacred places like the Temple of Literature. But what outraged Americans most wasn't her voice. It was a photo. On the last day of her trip, Jane was taken to a North Vietnamese military site. There, she was led to an anti-aircraft gun, the kind used to shoot down U.S. planes. What happened next became one of the most infamous moments in American pop culture. Jane, laughing and clapping, sat on the weapon. Cameras clicked. The image went global, and instantly she became Hanoi Jane. The backlash was brutal. Veterans felt betrayed. Families of dead pilots were furious. Lawmakers demanded she be tried for treason. The veterans of foreign wars called for her prosecution. Some states even talked about banning her movies. Her career nearly collapsed. She received death threats. Protesters followed her wherever she went. The photo had turned a protest into a scandal that would follow her for the rest of her life. Years later, in her 2005 autobiography, My Life So Far, Jane admitted the photo was the worst mistake of my life. She said she had been exhausted, confused, and emotionally overwhelmed. She never meant to sit on the gun. She had been led there after a musical performance and followed the crowd without thinking. It's possible it was a setup, she wrote, but I allowed it to happen. She called it a 2-minute lapse in sanity that she would regret forever. She apologized again and again to veterans, to their families, and to anyone hurt by the image. But many never forgave her. Even with all the regret, Jane didn't back down from her core beliefs. She never apologized for opposing the war or for going to North Vietnam. She made it clear. She stood by her activism. She believed the war was wrong and said it was her duty to speak out. She argued that many Americans had gone to Hanoi, but only she, a famous actress, was punished for it. In interviews, blog posts, and speeches, she said the real reason people were angry was that she had dared to challenge the government so publicly. And she wasn't sorry for that. Her partner, Tom Hayden, stood by her. In 1973, a year after the Hanoi trip, they got married. Their home became a base for political organizing. Together, they formed the Indochina Peace Campaign and took it across the country, including a famous stop at the Ohio State Fair. Jane even launched her aerobics videos in the 1980s to help fund Hayden's political campaigns. They made anti-war films together, had a son named Troy in 1973, and stayed married for 17 years. Even after they divorced in 1990, their influence on political activism never faded. Professionally, Jane made an astonishing comeback in 1980. The film 9 to 5, a comedy about 3 women fighting back against a sexist boss, became a blockbuster. It made over $103 million in the US and $103.3 million worldwide, becoming the second highest grossing film of the year. The movie was a hit, but also a message. It spoke to working women everywhere. Dolly Parton's theme song topped the charts. A TV series and Broadway musical followed. Jane had found her way back into the hearts of audiences. Then came On Golden Pond in 1981. Jane starred opposite her real-life father, Henry Fonda, and played a daughter trying to reconnect with her aging parents. The film echoed their real-life relationship, which had been strained and distant. The movie earned over $119 million and became the second biggest box office hit of the year. It was nominated for 10 Oscars and won 3, including Best Actor for Henry. Jane accepted the award on his behalf, as he was too ill to attend. He died just a few months later. Jane Fonda didn't just ride the fitness wave of the 1980s. She created it. In 1982, she released Jane Fonda's workout on VHS, and it exploded. Over 17 million copies were sold. It wasn't just a success, it was a movement. Just 1 year earlier, her workout book had already become a bestseller, with more than 2 million copies sold and 2 years on the New York Times list. The whole idea started after she fractured her foot in 1978. While recovering, she turned to aerobics. That led her to open a Beverly Hills studio with instructor Lenny Kasdan, where they created routines that felt personal, accessible, and especially inviting to women, at a time when gyms felt like a boys' club. Her upbeat phrases like, "Feel the burn," became part of pop culture, and so did her leg warmers. Women didn't just buy her tapes, they bought VCRs just to play them. Jane didn't just give the world a fitness tape. She changed how women exercised, looked at their bodies, and saw their role in health and fitness. But what made this even more shocking was where she had come from. In the late 60s and early 70s, Jane Fonda wasn't known for leotards and leg lifts. She was known for outrage. She marched against the Vietnam War. She visited North Vietnam in 1972 and was photographed sitting on an enemy anti-aircraft gun. That image earned her the nickname Hanoi Jane, and the backlash was fierce. She supported the Black Panthers, the American Indian movement, and co-founded a powerful political group in Hollywood. Then, seemingly overnight, she turned into America's workout queen. Her fitness empire, books, tapes, records, raked in millions. But she didn't pocket it all. She quietly poured much of the money into the campaign for economic democracy and other left-wing causes. It was a reinvention no one saw coming. One moment, she was a lightning rod for political rage. The next, she was the smiling face of healthy living. And somehow, she made both identities work. The surprises didn't stop there. In December 1991, at age 54, Jane married media tycoon Ted Turner in a quiet ceremony with just 30 guests. Turner, the billionaire founder of CNN and owner of the Atlanta Braves, was larger than life. He courted Jane intensely after her divorce from activist Tom Hayden. It was her third marriage, and his third too, but it felt different. She wrote their vows. Her son gave her away. They lived in luxury, CNN's penthouse, sprawling ranches, private jets. But that glamour had a cost. Jane walked away from acting altogether. For the next 15 years, she vanished from Hollywood. Her final role before the break had been in a 1990 TV special. And then, nothing. No films, no red carpets. She later said she'd lost her passion for acting and thought she might leave it all behind to work in environmental activism. She was deeply unhappy before Turner. She felt she needed a new life. At first, she poured herself into the marriage. She even said she gave up everything, her acting, her businesses, to be with Ted. But Turner wasn't the kind of husband who gave much space. He wanted Jane by his side constantly. She said it felt less like love and more like babysitting. They tried counseling. They tried compromises. But in January 2000, they separated. By 2001, the divorce was final. Jane walked away with a massive settlement, $100 million in assets and stock, plus a 2,500-acre ranch. Yet she's always spoken kindly of him. She once called him her favorite ex-husband. Still, she admitted she had reshaped herself to fit into his world. And it broke her. That realization would lead to one of the most unexpected comebacks in Hollywood history. In 2005, Jane Fonda was nearly 65 when she got a script for a romantic comedy called Monster-in-Law. It was her first major role in 15 years. The movie starred Jennifer Lopez, and Jane knew the younger star would draw crowds. But she had a plan. Once people came, they'd rediscover her too. And that's exactly what happened. Jane played a controlling mother-in-law with razor-sharp comic timing. Audiences loved it. The film grossed over $154 million on a $43 million budget. Critics may have been mixed about the movie itself, but they agreed. Jane Fonda had stolen every scene. She later called the decision to do that film the only smart career move I ever made. And suddenly, she was back. People under 30 who had never heard of her Oscars now knew her as the woman from Monster-in-Law. Just when the world thought she might slow down, she threw another curveball. In 2013, she played Nancy Reagan in Lee Daniels' The Butler. The casting set off a firestorm. Fonda, the anti-war activist, playing the ultra-conservative First Lady. Outrage spread fast. Veterans groups protested. Online boycotts popped up. People couldn't separate the actress from the activist. But Jane didn't back down. She approached the role with care. She even reached out to Nancy Reagan through mutual friends and was told that Nancy didn't object. Fonda's performance was small but powerful. The film itself grossed over $177 million globally. But the headlines were all about Jane. She didn't try to silence the backlash. Her answer was simple: get a life. That fearless attitude carried over to her next major project. In 2015, Jane Fonda and Lily Tomlin reunited for a new Netflix series called Grace and Frankie. The show followed two women in their 70s who are blindsided when their husbands leave them for each other. It was bold, it was hilarious, and it was a hit. Grace and Frankie became Netflix's longest-running original series with 94 episodes over 7 seasons. Audiences loved the honesty, the wit, and the chemistry between Fonda and Tomlin. Critics praised it too. The show scored 88% on Rotten Tomatoes. Emmy nominations followed. But more importantly, the series changed lives. One viewer said the show saved her sister's life. She was suicidal after her husband came out, and watching Grace and Frankie gave her hope. That's the kind of impact Jane Fonda was now making, and she wasn't done. After decades of serious dramas and political statements, Jane found something new in her 70s and 80s, comedy. It had started with Monster-in-Law, but Grace and Frankie proved she had the gift. As Grace Hanson, she delivered biting lines, took pratfalls, and brought physical comedy to a new level. The show's creators said her timing was perfect. For an actress once known for roles like Clute and Coming Home, this late career shift was stunning. But she embraced it completely. She wasn't just relevant, she was hilarious, and audiences couldn't get enough. Then, in 2023, at the age of 85, Jane starred in 80 for Brady. The film followed 4 older women, played by Fonda, Lily Tomlin, Sally Field, and Rita Moreno, on a wild trip to see Tom Brady play in the Super Bowl. It was based on a true story, and it worked. The film celebrated friendship, aging, and female fandom. Jane's role as Trish, a romantic novelist with a love for wigs and drama, stole scenes again. The movie wasn't just fun, it sent a message. Life doesn't end at 60, 70, or even 80. Fonda talked openly during press interviews about staying active, staying sharp, and staying visible. She wanted people to know that older women aren't invisible, and they aren't done. At 84 years old, Jane Fonda stunned the world with a deeply personal announcement. In September 2022, she revealed on Instagram that she had been diagnosed with non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, a type of blood cancer that affects the immune system. The news was heavy, but she didn't hide from it. She called the cancer very treatable and mentioned the survival rate was around 80%. She was honest about the fact that she had access to top-tier healthcare, something she said many Americans can't afford. Then she went one step further. She pointed to fossil fuels and pesticides, many of which are tied to cancer, and called them out. At her age, and with her fame, most people would have stayed quiet. But Jane used her diagnosis as a way to push for healthcare fairness and environmental justice. And this wasn't a retirement phase. At the same time, she was still filming the final season of Grace and Frankie and marching in climate protests. Even with cancer, she didn't slow down. Her raw honesty, especially about aging and illness, struck a chord with millions, especially older adults who rarely see their struggles in the spotlight. But Jane didn't just talk about her cancer. She showed the world what it looked like to go through chemotherapy while still being present in public life. The same month she revealed her diagnosis, she said she would begin 6 months of chemo. She didn't step away from activism. She kept attending rallies and hosting her fire drill Fridays. Her doctors said the treatment was going well, and Jane made sure people knew that she wasn't hiding. She talked about the side effects. She showed up tired but still smiling. She reminded everyone that not everyone could afford the care she was getting. And still, she carried on. Her social media became a lifeline for people going through the same thing. She didn't sugarcoat anything, but she didn't let the disease define her either. The way she handled chemotherapy in public without retreating, gave others strength. It showed that illness doesn't have to silence you. It can sharpen your purpose. Then came the moment everyone was hoping for. In December 2022, just days before she turned 85, Jane got the news. Her cancer was in remission. She called it the best birthday present ever. In a blog post with that exact title, she thanked her medical team and her supporters. She said the first few rounds of chemo weren't too bad, just some fatigue. But the final session hit her hard. It left her completely drained for 2 full weeks. Still, as soon as the side effects wore off, she showed up at her first in-person Fire Drill Friday in Washington, D.C. That one act said everything about who she is. Her story lit up headlines again, not because she beat cancer, but because she used her remission as another chance to speak up. She thanked her fans for their prayers and said their energy helped her heal. For older people especially, her comeback was powerful. It reminded everyone that cancer treatments have come a long way, and that recovery is possible even at 85. Long before the diagnosis, Jane Fonda was already challenging expectations. In February 2020, she made waves at the Oscars. She walked on stage with silver hair, stunning the world. She was 82. The transformation took 7 hours. Her colorist, Jack Martin, bleached and toned her hair until it had that icy, elegant silver tone. But Jane didn't just sit in a salon chair. She spent those 7 hours writing chapters of her book, memorizing lines for Grace and Frankie, and answering emails. That moment wasn't about fashion. It was about freedom. She said she was done spending time, money, and energy trying to look younger. She was proud of her age. Her gray hair became more than a style choice. It became a movement. Women around the world saw that and realized they didn't need to hide their age either. Jane made gray beautiful, and she made honesty powerful. Now at 87, Jane Fonda is still moving. Every day she works out. She's adjusted her routine with age, but she hasn't stopped. She alternates between upper and lower body training and takes long walks for cardio. After she gave up running, walking became her go-to. She also stretches daily to stay flexible. She uses resistance bands, light weights, and does core work to protect her balance and posture. Her personal trainer helps her adapt exercises to match her energy levels and prevent injury. But her philosophy is what sticks with people. She always says, "Do what you can, rather than nothing at all." That message is simple, but powerful. It cuts through the pressure to be perfect. And for older adults, it's an invitation to keep going, no matter what. Jane's fitness isn't about vanity. It's about strength, independence, and joy. And once again, by sharing her routines, she gives people permission to show up for themselves.